I've always struggled to find dividers for my 6-ring binder. I'm so particular about what I want, whether that's how many tabs there are or the materials used. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to digitally create files that you can cut out using something like a Cricut or a silhouette cutter. Before we jump in, if you want to see more tutorials like this, feel free to subscribe and also feel free to drop a comment below on any future tutorials that you'd like to see. Let's get started. We're going to create a new file. And I'm just going to make this the same size as the material I'm using. So I'm going to name my document and I'm going to leave all of this as is. If you're making something that you want to print and then cut yourself, you might want to swap that color mode to CMYK, but my material is A4, so I'll just keep all of these settings at A4, but it doesn't really matter. Then I'm going to make a rectangle that's the size of my divider. So I'm going to make an A5 rectangle. So that will be a width of 14.8 centimeters and a height of 21 centimeters. And then using my properties panel, I'm just going to center that on my canvas. And if you don't have the properties panel open, just go Window and then find Properties. So this is my A5 paper now. And we're going to create the holes for our rings. Now, for an A5 6-ring binder, the rings are spaced at 1.9 centimeters apart with a gap in the middle of 7 centimeters. But this is a bit deceptive because the holes are centered over those dividers. So we'll make ourselves a template and then we'll create the holes from there. So using the rectangle tool, I'll just click to type in what I want. So the width, I'll just make this like 0.5 centimeters. And then the height, 1.9. And we'll make this a color that we can see easily. Something like that. And then I'm just going to turn off the stroke, just so we can see a bit better what we're doing. The width isn't important, just the height. So we want another one of these. So I'm going to hold Option or Alt if you're on Windows, duplicate it, and I'm also holding Shift to keep it aligned so that the tops of those meet. And I'll just make this a different color so that we can see it a bit better. Then we're going to create another one, except this one is going to be 7 centimeters tall. So in the Properties panel with the Transform part, we're going to change the anchor, the reference point, to the bottom, and we'll change that height to 7 centimeters. So that just expands upward. And then we will duplicate these two and pop them at the top. I'm going to select all of those and group them using the shortcut Command G or Control G if you're on Windows. And then I'm going to select this group and my rectangle, that is my paper size. And then I'm going to select my rectangle again. This puts a blue highlight on it and turns it into what is called a key object. So that means that it's going to align to this object. And then I'm just going to do a horizontal align. And then I'm just going to drag this in, holding Shift. You can decide how far from the edge you want this, but since this is just a reference guide, it doesn't matter too much. I'm going to create my holes. So that's going to be a circle. So let's grab the ellipse tool. Well, the shortcut for that is L. And I'm just going to click. Most are 0.6 centimeters in diameter. I believe some of the inserts that came with my binder are like 0.7. They're like slightly bigger, maybe even 0.65. But I'm just going to leave it at 0.6. And right now it just has a white fill and no stroke. So I'm just going to hit D to set that to default, and then slash, which will remove a stroke from my fill. If your fill is not in front, just hit X, and that will move one in front. And then I'm just going to move this circle, and we're going to put it on the end point of this here. And I'm also just going to center that. And then I'm just going to duplicate that and do the same thing and let it say midpoint. You can see there it says midpoint. Oh, sorry, holding Option or Alt. And then we're going to do that again at the very top of that. And you can also hit Command D or Control D, and what that does is it repeats the action again if you want to. That can make it a bit easier. So that's our holes. I'm just going to hide my guide now from my layers panel. And then I'm going to select everything and deselect my paper and just group those together. That will make it a little bit easier. I can grab the measure tool or the dimension tool and just have a quick look at how far this is from the edge. This is 0.52 at the moment. We can have that a bit further away if we want to. I believe my inserts are 0.6, I think. You can use the arrow keys as well if you want to, but I think I'm quite happy with that. And then we're going to duplicate this rectangle. So Command C or Control C if you're on Windows to copy, and then Command Shift V or Control Shift V if you're on Windows to paste in place. Then we're going to go Object, Path, Split into Grid. Then we're going to go Preview so that we know that we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to make 7 rows. Now what this does is it just allows me to see very clearly what the size of my tabs are going to be. You can do this with math if you want, but I'm lazy, so I do it this way. In the Properties panel, I'm going to make the width of these 1 centimeter. And then I'm just going to drag that along to the very end of here. And then I'll delete all but 1 tab. So we're left with this. I'm going to swap to the direct selection tool, which is this tool here, or you can use the shortcut A for that. And we get these circles at each of our corners. What these do is they control our corner radius. So we'll select 2 of those and then double click to open the corners window. Sometimes it will open the transform window if you're not in this tool here, or sometimes if you've got them all selected, but other times it will open this corners one. So around those corners, click OK. And then I'm going to use the scissors tool to cut off this line here. The shortcut for that is C. I rarely call it the scissors tool because the shortcut is C. It just makes it a lot easier to call it the cut tool, especially because what it does is it cuts. So I'll delete that path and we're left with just this. Now I am quite happy with this, but we want 2 of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm just going to remove the fill from these. So shortcut slash to do that. And one of these I'm going to cut down the midpoint. So I'm left with half of it. And then I'm going to grab the pen tool, which is the shortcut P, and then I'm just going to attach a line to it. So if you missed that, if we click on the endpoint, the cursor will hover with the straight line and a little diagonal next to it. So what that means is we're going to continue on the path. And so holding Shift, I can drag that down. And we've added a corner to this. I'll go to my direct selection tool, select this corner, double click on the handle and make that also 0.3 centimeters. And then I'm going to copy this. So Command C or Control C if you're on Windows. I'm going to paste in place. So Command Shift V. And then in the transform panel, I'm going to change the anchor to the very top. And I'm going to flip. Oh, I made a mistake there because I didn't reselect my thing. It only had the anchor point that I created selected. Command C, Command Shift V, and then flip it. So now we've got that. And then we're going to join it using Command J. And if you want to, we can also use the minus or the delete anchor point tool to remove this extra anchor point we've created in the center. So I will do that now. You can use that by hitting the minus key on your keyboard and then just removing it. This is because when we're cutting on something like a silhouette or a cricket, we want to remove all unnecessary anchor points, because every time there is a new anchor point, that's where your blade is going to lift up and then go down again, and you don't want it to catch on anything. So you want to make sure that it's as clean as possible to prevent things like jagged lines in your cuts or anything like that. So as minimal anchor points as possible to create smooth cuts. So now we've got this one. This is going to be our tabs that go in like the middle. And then this one, we just want one on it. So we'll do the same thing here. It doesn't matter the length of this, to be honest. And we will make that 0.3. So we just did the same thing. We grabbed the pen tool, we added onto it, we rounded that corner. But we've only done this on one side because this is going to be either the first tab or the last tab. And that's why we need two different tab designs. So that is what that looks like there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add all of these in. So I'm going to take this one, duplicate it, holding Alt. I'm going to flip it, and I'll pop that one at the end. There. And then this one, we will line that up with that one. We could be a little more precise with this if you wanted to. We can go into outline mode, which is Control Y, and we can make sure that those paths are truly lined up. And then we will duplicate that. Another thing you can do if you want to is make paths with our with those guides that we made when we did object path split into grid. You can choose to make those guides as well. That can also be helpful. But there we are. We have all of our tabs and they're all lined up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my circles and my paper size, and then we're going to go minus front. And what that has done is it has now made this a hole in the object. So I'm going to swap the colors all around. So I'll hit D just to make sure they're all default. Shift X because we want them to be black. It just makes it a little bit easier to see. X to change what one we're editing, and then slash to remove color. And so now if we drag that off, we can see that's a hole that's been cut through there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my artboard. So Shift O to get to the artboard tool, and then holding Alt, we can duplicate it. And any hidden or locked objects, remember we hid our guides that we used to create the holes. And then I'm just going to hit Command D 7 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we want an 8th one. And the reason I'm doing 8 is just so that we have one at the end that's completely unedited, so that if we do make a mistake or anything like that, we can easily find our way back. Then I'm going to select our top one and this one, and I'm going to use Pathfinder Unite and delete the excess tabs. Now I'm just going to rearrange my artboard so that we can see things a bit easier. There we are. So we have one that's left unedited. I'll just swap the fill and the stroke around so you can see that. And then we have our finished planner dividers. So let's export them. And for Cricut, all we need to do is export these as an SVG. And what's great about these is that because of the way that we did it, these are all something called a compound path, which means it's already attached when it goes into Cricut Design Space. Your holes aren't going to become misaligned with the background of this. So let's export them. We want to go File, Save As, and we want to save it as an SVG. We want to make sure Use Artboards is ticked on so that each artboard gets saved as a different file. And then for range, I just have 1 to 7 so that this last one here doesn't get exported because we're not going to be cutting with it. We are just saving it in case anything goes wrong. Now, always, always, always make sure you do a test cut on paper to make sure you've got everything aligned, and then also test cut the material that you use because you never know how it's going to cut. For material for my dividers, I like to use a wide variety of things. Sometimes I buy bigger dividers and cut them down. Sometimes I buy clear plastic from art stores, and I've also got this frosted plastic that I like to use that's 0.5 centimeters thick. Um, and that makes quite nice dividers. But you want to make sure you're always test cutting these with your Cricut to make sure that they work for you. So that's all we have for today. If you liked that tutorial, make sure to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again soon.